Welcome to Eye on the Illini. This is Mike Cagley. We've got a lot of people here tonight. We've got Matt Stevens, Kedric Prince, Brad Sturdy, and the man of mystery, Steve Sturm. We are going to talk a little bit about this Illini recruiting class. And we don't want to be too monotonous where we go through every player and everybody has to say one comment. So it's going to be a little more free flowing. But I do want to get some comments from each person. We'll start with Brad and then go to Ked and then Matt and Steve. But let's talk about what we have in terms of overall impressions, Brad, of this class. What did you think of what is going on, in terms of what was accomplished and when you look at these players, what are your thoughts?
I think it's a solid class. I think that they have it's a top 50 national class, sometimes in the top 40, depending on which publication you're using. So it obviously grades out pretty well. I'm a big fan of, Carson Boyd. I'm a big fan of Braden Trimble. I'm a big fan of Grant Bierman. So there's some guys, at top of the class, very good. I think the only thing I'm concerned about really is the fact that they maybe don't have, the defensive line guys that, especially interior defensive line that maybe they're going to need down the road. So I think what I would like to see is they're going to have to address that in the portal. But overall, I think it's a solid class. I do think it builds well into 2026. I think 2026 can be an even better class because, they have more scholarships and also the fact that they, that they're going to come off this 9-win season. That's really where it's going to help is in 2026.
I think they've done a really good job of addressing needs. This is high school right now. We all talk outside of this lovely podcast that we're doing right now. We know that they need offensive linemen. We know they need defensive linemen. But I know there's guys there that are true freshmen that haven't played. So having said that, I agree with Brad. I really believe the transfer portal is where they're going to look for some of those players at. They know that that's an issue, and they know that's an issue of need. So to me, I think they address a lot of issues. They address a lot of concerns. There's, we'll eventually at some point talk about, whether they're 2-star, 3-star, 5 stars. I mean, people get hung up with that stuff. I really do, and I guess I should in my position, but I just look at talent and I watch a lot of game film on these kids, and I'm pretty impressed with what they did. What they've done with this class.
Matt?
Brad kind of echoed my feeling. Mike, you and I have talked about this a lot, whether it's been post-game after games or whether it's been like preseason back in the summer. I haven't been in love with this class for several months. I haven't hated it. I've never hated it. I just haven't been in love with it. And it's the disappointment for me is that I don't know if there was a more talent-rich, fruitful defensive line class in the state of Illinois, and Illinois kind of biffed on pretty much everybody except for one. And it's another year in which Illinois didn't get anybody in the top 10 in the state of Illinois under anybody's, kind of ranking system. That means Brett Bielema now has done 4 recruiting classes. That's 40 players. If you take the top 10, he's gotten a grand total of 2. That's not getting it done in the state of Illinois, like you said you were going to, like when you got up to the press conference. And I know that that's really hard, and you got to recruit against Michigan's and Notre Dame's, and Georgia came in and got the number 2 ranked player in the state this year. You got to recruit against a whole bunch of people in the state of Illinois, but that's the job you took. So you got to do it better than you're doing it right now. What I really like about the class is I think from an athleticism standpoint, especially from a skill position standpoint, I think they've done a better job than they have in a long, long time. Brad knows that, I saw Carson Boyd live at Rochester. I was really impressed. A lot of people have seen Brandon Trimble live. I think he could be a star in this class. I think the 2 running backs that they got in this class are very, very talented and are very, very encouraging. So I think from an offensive skill position, I think, you got yourself, a really good class. I think from a defensive line and an offensive line and a linebacker standpoint, we got some work to do. and that leaves me a little bit confused as to what Illinois is trying to build here as they go forward, because the in-state offensive line class was not there this year, and I thought they did a heck of a job of getting who they got, but I thought defensive line, they should have done a heck of a lot better, especially inside the state.
Steve?
So I guess I'm going to disagree with you guys a little bit, because this class is about as well as I could have hoped for, but I have to put in the caveats that casual Illini fans, not Illini guy readers, of course, but casual Illini fans might not realize that just the way Bielema does things is to sign up guys in May or June. And in May or June, of course, you can't sell the 9-3 season that we have, that we enjoyed later. So as far as looking at a 9-3 team, these guys are about as good as you could hope for. I think they identified the guys they could get, and when you sign them up in June, you're kind of betting on them to have big senior years, and I think by and large they did. So this class is probably a little bit underrated also when you consider that the rivals 247 on 3 out there aren't going to keep evaluating these guys. They aren't going to really upgrade them very often when they're committed in early June like Illinois likes. So number one, this class is probably a little underrated, given that these guys are by and large are underrated. And number two, this is about as good a class as you could hope for coming off of last year's 5-7 season. So I like it, considering what you can expect from a Brett Bielema program.
I have a quick follow-up. And for the listeners out there, please understand this, and I will repeat this again. Please understand this. This is not me disagreeing with Matt. Matt brought up a lot of valid points, but here's my comment to what Matt said. Brett Bielema did say he was going to recruit the state, and I know they're working it. I know every staff member that goes out, and they have to report where they've been, how those conversations have gone. The issue is, I don't care if they don't come. I really don't, because if you don't get the player from the state of Illinois, then you go to Iowa, you go to Florida, you go to Minnesota, you go to Michigan. You get the kids. At the end of the day, Illinois was a dead program, and that sounds really negative, but it was. These kids don't have any loyalties to the University of Illinois. It is attractive to them to go to Michigan, to go to Notre Dame. It makes sense, and I get it. But when you go down to Florida or if you go to Minnesota, those kids don't have those negative vibes that you have in the state. Illinois has not won for a long time. And I will end it with this. If there's a 6'5", 325 offensive lineman from the state of Minnesota and one from Illinois and have the same talent, why do I give a rat's where they came from? Because I don't. I really don't. It would be nice to keep those kids home. It really would be. But in reality, it doesn't happen because Illinois goes to those as well and pick those players. So, Matt, I get what you're saying, and it makes sense because you want to keep them home. But at the same time, you have to get kids in your program who want to be here.
And I think as somebody who watches this with not the detail that you guys do, but I like the idea of getting the guys locally, especially the highest ranked ones. But, you look at the 30 years that old Ron Gunther put together of football, and, you've got to not only are the kids in high school right now just learning that Illinois can actually play successful high school or, successful football, but in many cases, their parents remember 2007 and 2001. And that's it. And I think that you're paying a little bit of the piper for that. So we're not going to go and folks, we're not trying to short shrift any one player, but if we go through every player, it gets a little bit dry. So let's talk a little bit about, go around the horn. You guys talk about some of the players that intrigue you when you look at this class, and let's go with the same order that we went, and we'll let Mr. Sturdy lead off.
Well, obviously, local guy, Braden Trimble's a kid that I'm very excited about. He's, 6'6", but his arms are freakishly long. I mean, he has such a great catch radius. He makes plays. He's got good body control. He's got the speed to get over the top. It's really impressive kid. I mean, obviously, just like most high school kids coming in, he's going to need to get stronger. But this is a kid I think can be an impact player at wide receiver down the road. So I think there's a lot of potential there with Braden Trimble. He's one of my favorites in this class. I do like that they added Jershawn Newton. I mean, that's obviously a big name. I know he's going to get a chance to play running back. I don't know where he slots, where he comes out, but but I really like him. And then the flip they got with Grant Bierman. Those are the three guys. And then Matt mentioned Carson Boyd. Carson Boyd is. I think he's a special talent. I think he's got that ability, especially in college. I'm not saying NFL is a different animal, but in college, those mobile quarterbacks that can throw on the run, that can do things with their feet and with their arm, they're hard to stop. And I think he can be that kind of guy. We've even seen Luke Altmaier. Luke Altmaier is a good athlete, but he's not like a guy you would say, oh, this guy's a running quarterback. But you've seen him do so many good things with his legs in addition to what he's done with his arm. So I really love that mobile quarterback that you can get with a guy like Carson Boyd.
Well, for me, I'm going to start off, with guys that I like. And it's the junior college kid from Iowa Central, who's originally from Minnesota, Ismail Kante. I like his film. And here's a guy that's a low-ranked kid, but if you watch his film, he's looking to hurt people. That sounds bad, but he is looking to literally punish people. And it reminds me of the 2022 Illinois defense. Big fan of his. Big fan of Grant Bierman because he is fast. He is like a Mikey Dudek playing linebacker to me, or Hank Beatty. Just a really, really good freakish athlete. I love that about him. Another guy that I'm a fan of because I've interviewed this kid a million times was Andre Lovett, a guy that had a ton of offers. I'm talking could have went anywhere. I mean, this kid visited Illinois more than I have, and I've been covering the team for 20 years, it seems like. He knew where he was going to go. He's athletic, and he is willing to do anything, to play any position on the field to help this team win. Now, Mike, you asked a question about a lot of guys, and I know some guys are going to be left off. That doesn't mean that, we don't like those players. These are guys that we just know something about a little bit more than others, but those are guys that really stick out to me early on with this class right now.
I'll go with quarterback again. I mean, Brad mentioned Carson Boyd, but, again, I watched him go play Rochester this year. Here's the thing about Carson Boyd is that I think he gets pigeonholed as a running quarterback, and he's not. Like, the arm talent and the arm strength of Carson Boyd is just phenomenal to watch live. And it shouldn't be coming out of a body that's 5'10" and 180 pounds. Like, it just shouldn't. And when you play in Barry Lenny's system, yeah, you're going to have to avoid the rush, and you're going to have to be able to throw from different platforms, and you're going to have to be able to escape the pocket, and still make throws, but you still got to make the throws. He came in and just did everything he was asked to do in camp when he was a junior. And that's the guy that they identified very, very quickly that they wanted. I give Barry Lenny a lot of credit for looking at somebody who's all of 5'10". He's not any taller than that. And saying, you know what, we're going to take him because he can still play the position. I give them a lot of credit for their evaluation on that one. I tend to like Griffin Rousseau. I think, look, this program needs guys that can, project as tackles. And I think he can project as a right tackle later on in life at Illinois. But I do know that he's somebody that I think is athletic enough to play right tackle or get slid in at guard at Illinois. Bart Miller did a heck of a job in this evaluation because Stoughton is way the heck up in northern Wisconsin, and it is not seen by a lot of people. They did a really, really good job in that evaluation. They needed tackles. And then the third one to me is, I think, very, very projectable because I think he's going to have enough time in the system, and I hope he has a consistent position coach because this hasn't happened at Illinois in the last 3 years. But Eric Gale, I think you're talking about somebody who they flipped from Cincinnati, a local kid who decided I'm gonna flip from my local Big 12 school that I can go to and probably have a great career, but he wants to be somebody that I think can put on a lot more weight. But he has the length that I think that they look for in that rush linebacker position. He's going to have a lot of guys in front of him, I think. Maybe not, based off of decisions that, Gabe Yakus and Alec Bryant are going to have to make later on this offseason. But I think that position group got a lot better because he's very, very athletic, and he has the ability to go get the quarterback in a lot of different ways. So I think that there's some positivity with the development of what Eric Gale could be if Clint Stenham can get his hands on him and continue to stay in Champaign. That's really exciting for me. Is that somebody who I don't think he's reached his full body potential yet, and when he does, he could be an animal in the Big 12 and the Big 10.
Well, my number one guy is Cedric Weish. This is a guy who has all the athletic measurables you could ask for, and then he upsized his competition this fall by going to St. Thomas Aquinas, a football factory where you're facing some of the best competition in the United States, and he passed every test with flying colors. His numbers are going to be a little bit down from what you're used to because he's sharing time with another Division I prospect there at St. Thomas Aquinas. But 8.2 yards a carry at St. Thomas Aquinas and 11 touchdowns in halftime is tremendous. And then you have to consider that he's also a track star who runs at 5'10", 205. This is a guy who, had he started at a St. Thomas Aquinas, would have been a 4-star for sure. I think he's going to have a great future at the University of Illinois. I like him more than I like Forster. And when it comes to Carson Boyd, I'm a big fan as well. I think people tend to look at the number and the skin color, the numbers and the skin color, and project him as being something that he's not. But the fact is, he actually is going to do exactly what Luke Altmaier does. His arm slot is actually probably going to be even a little bit higher than Luke Altmaier's. And he's probably just about as athletic, actually not quite as athletic as some people are painting him to be, but he really does do everything that you want from a pocket passer. He does a tremendous job, quick release. He's got everything you need. It's just, you have to kind of, play like they do in the video games and just like put a different avatar on him. And all of a sudden you see that he really is the pocket passer that you want in the Big Ten. So I'm really impressed by him. I was going to say Davion Chandler. He was my absolute favorite in this entire class. And then Indiana realized that and, stole him away as soon as Illinois got him committed.
So a question I have real quick is, Illinois looks to be, with Trey Petty, with Leary, with Altmaier, and Carson Boyd, and now they've got another commitment. Can anybody remember a time that Illinois' quarterback room was this deep? Because when you went in the 80s, I don't know that they had this many quarterbacks, although they were darn good. Any thoughts on that?
There was a time when Illinois.
You're going to need one of them to hit. Mike, you're going to need one of them to hit. Yeah. That's all you need, because only one of them can play.
We did actually line up 4 straight 4-star quarterbacks in the Zook era. When Isaiah Juice Williams was our starting quarterback, we did line up Nate Shieldhouse and was able to redshirt him. And then we did have 2 other guys who didn't really work out, Riley O'Toole and I'm forgetting the guy who transferred out to Connecticut, but he was a 4-star player. So it was kind of nice to have those guys lined up, but this is what we're looking at.
Yeah, what I was saying was, Mike, is that you've got a situation now where, like, this is one of those weird deals where only one quarterback can play. So I'm looking at it like Trey Petty, Carson Boyd, and then somebody help me out with the
Michael Clayton.
Michael Clayton. Thank you, Steve. Like on the 2026, when you line them up, boom, 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 like that. Okay, one of them has to hit, and then the other 2, when they don't play, they'll transfer out. That's the world of college football that we live in. But you better your odds of one of them hitting when you can do that, and you don't have to go to the portal, because, and I'm not saying that like schools don't do well when they go to the portal for quarterbacks, but I know that they spend a lot of money. And I think if you're at Illinois, you would like to not have to do that. And you'd like to spend your resources in the portal other places than quarterback, because it eats a big egg of your budget when you have to go to the portal for quarterback. And I think Illinois is trying very, very hard to set up themselves for not having to do that in the near future.
Yeah, totally get that. Now, I do want to throw one thing out there, because I wonder about the recruiting strategy. I see Oregon today, and trust me, every school would want to be in this position. but they got the number 1 wide receiver, the number 3 wide receiver, the number 18 wide receiver. And then in terms of DBs, they got the number 2 cornerback, the number 5 cornerback, the number 6 cornerback, and the number 2 safety. Is that just something, Brad, where they're basically spending money to recruit so that they can have a nice transfer portal in a year or two?
I don't know. It's hard to say that. But I mean, I don't know. It seems to me like it's also different right now, because it used to be, you bring in 26 guys, 30 guys, whatever it is. Some guys are going to leave, but you felt good about that. Now, if a guy doesn't play, he's just going to leave. I mean, it's just that simple. And even guys, we're seeing this around the Big Ten. We've seen some programs the guys are leaving who are like all Big Ten players are leaving like now. I mean, it's crazy when you think about it, like that they're leaving and they're just free agents as of right now. And some of them are leaving before a bowl game even, and they're out there. So this is just a different world that we live in. I don't know how guys I don't know if you have a plan. I feel like Mike Tyson right now. Yeah. Everybody has a plan until they get punched in the mouth, right? So I think that's where, I think that's where it is right now. You have a plan, but you better be able to flip and change, because it's going to change over the next 30 days.
Mike, you know what? You asked that question, but we all answered it before. You just asked, how did Oregon do that? You just, Steve and Matt just answered it with the quarterback. Somebody's going to leave. You just mentioned about 3 or 4 cornerbacks and safeties that Oregon recruited. Somebody's not going to play, so they're going to leave. So that's what's happening. Yeah, it looks good on paper. Like Illinois has all those quarterbacks, and Matt just said it. At some point, only one can play. So all those cornerbacks, and they can sit there, and they're not going to rot. They're not going to sit there on that bench in today's day and age and not play. It's not going to happen. Now, Illinois and Oregon, different levels, but these kids want to play. And why would you, as a 5-star recruit, go somewhere and there's a guy who beat you out that's a year older and you're going to sit for 2 years? Those days are numbered. I mean, and if you could get a kid like that to do that, that's a hell of a coaching job.
Next up, the question that I wanted to kind of ask about, we see speed and how speed kills with our friends at Oregon. Is there any speed at different positions that might be guys who could differentiate Illinois a bit and have that positional speed, just like Brad Underwood wants to get positional length and shooting ability? So I was just curious what your guys' thought were on the speed kills portion of this. Well,
Steve evidently disagrees with me, but on the speed of Carson Boyd. But I watched him run away from all the Luther North guys, and I'm going to tell you, he's really fast and athletic. So I think he's got that speed there. But I do think speed's an important part. I think Trimble's got that speed. The other part about this, even the offense, the one thing I'll say is the offensive linemen here are athletic dudes. Griffin Russo's athletic. Michael McDonough. So we don't really talk about him. But I will tell you that he's very athletic in the sense that he's a wrestler. You love those interior offensive linemen that are also wrestlers, and he's a state qualifying wrestler. I think that's good. So I think he has good speed there. You mentioned, somebody mentioned, I think it was Steve mentioned Eric Gale. He has good speed for his good positional speed, I guess you would say. So there's some guys who can run, but I also think even at tight end, he's a little undersized right now from a slender, but Grant Smith can move. Grant Smith has that ability to maybe be that tight end who can get down the seam, can create space. So
I think Illinois went genetic with their speed. I think Baby Newton can run. Like, I don't know where he's going to play in 2 years, because it's not going to be.
Oh, he'll find a place. He's a football
I'll call it
player
right now. Like, I don't think it's going to be quarterback. Like, I think they're going to let him try. And I think he's had 4 really good years of quarterback at Clearwater Catholic. And if it works out, great. Like, but if it doesn't work out, like, they're going to treat him like Isaiah Williams, and they're going to find a place to put him on the field because he's that fast. Like, and he's that good of an athlete. The other one is Tywan Cox, Torrey Cox's younger brother. Like, that's a guy who literally is in the state finals in Florida in the 100-yard dash. Like, we're talking about like sprint speed here. And I mean, his older brother is one of the fastest guys on the roster right now. And his younger brother is going to challenge, Torrey on this roster in terms of speed. So I think Illinois went genetic with their speed. I agree with Brad. I think Eric Gale has the speed and the athleticism to do both things, which is go get the quarterback, but he can also drop in coverage and play the perimeter a lot better than a lot of the normal Illinois, outside linebackers that you've seen. I don't think Gabe Yakus is built to, cover the quarterback option, and he's not going to be asked to do that on Sunday. I think Eric Gale, even if he puts on more weight, is going to be more apt to do that because of his speed and because of his quickness and because of his lateral movement. But I think the baby Newton and the baby Cox that are coming to Illinois is where you're going to get your speed. And I really think both of those guys could be, speedsters and cause havoc in the defensive backfield if that's where they both end up. I know Tywan Cox is going to end up there. I think as a nickel. But I think if Newton doesn't work out at quarterback, there's a lot of different ways you can get him on the field. Also, Tyron Cox is a punt returner, and he's been compared to Jaheim Clark in the way that if you put him out on special teams, he's going to get out on the football field, and then you're going to see his athleticism, and they're going to go, oh, well, we got to get you on defense at least somehow, some way, and they're going to. I think he's somebody that could make an impact, not maybe as a true freshman, especially on special teams, and could make the 74-man travel roster.
Mark, can I make a comment really quick? Because I was going to make a comment before Bill made his post here. I had a chance to talk to Mr. Jerson Newton. I did when he was in Champaign. And so here's what he said to me about the quarterback position. And the article may be on IlliniGuys still if you go back to find it. He is going to be given a shot at quarterback, but he knows that it's probably not going to happen as well. He said that to me. Those were his words. So we're not passing the buck with him, but they're recruiting other guys. And like Matt just said, they're going to find a spot for him on the field because he's too good of a player. But I don't think he committed to Illinois just because he thinks he's going to play quarterback either. He's an athlete. He's quick. He's good enough, and he knows he's going to be on the field. I think they told him they would give him a shot, but that's the extent of it. And those words came directly out of his mouth to me.
Now, can Jerson Newton, can he carry another 100 pounds and play defensive line? Because boy, we could use another Johnny Newton.
When I look at Jerson Newton,
I can answer that no.
When I look at Jerson Newton, I wonder if he wouldn't be a really, really dangerous running back. He's not all that far away from being able to put on, say, 220 and be just absolutely dangerous. Or, I mean, you could line him out wide if he can take to, wide receiver skills, which, we know that he has running back skills because anybody can see that he can run with the ball. But as far as athleticism, Cedric Weiss, I mentioned already. Andre Lovett is somebody Ken mentioned earlier as well. And Andre Lovett is as athletic as you can get. And then Ismail Conte. I mean, if you guys watched his film, I have never seen a linebacker prospect who was able to carry wide receivers down the field in single coverage. And if you watch that film, they even have a safety over the top on some of those plays. The safety rolls outside because they are counting on Conte to handle those wide receivers down the field in single coverage. And he does it. It's not like he was just kind of in the area. It's not like he was in the area just kind of hoping to maybe bat down a pass. He's in that guy's jersey. I mean, we don't have athletes like that. Now, Conte I mentioned is just kind of a wild card. He could be a star. He might not play and just be on special teams, with that athleticism. But as far as athleticism, you're just not going to get any better than that.
This is the run my own business dream. This is the colleges paid for dream. This is the retire early dream. This is Busey, where your dreams and possibilities become moments through trusted guidance and expertise, through lifelong relationships. Because we're here to help you achieve the life you've always envisioned.
One other question here. This Cal leave, I'm not certain what moving position he could do, but
it's been talked about, could he move? Could he be a garbage version of Hank Beatty, like at the wide receiver position. Cal's getting, like, if you saw the travel roster, he's getting passed over already by Trey Petty. So that they're trying, like, they'll never say it in the Smith Center, but they're trying to send a message to Cal Swanson. I think you'd be better off going and playing somewhere else. Like, that's what I get out of it. But, you could lose 3 quarterbacks next year, and suddenly now, like, we've got to get Cal Swanson prepared, I guess, to play, maybe. So, but yeah, I think that quarterback room is getting a little packed, and I don't think it's going to have the same amount of members in it come New Year's Day. Like, let's put it that way.
And so, Brad, what are we looking at with guys? Who's in the portal for Illinois right now, and then who do you think are there anybody that we think we've heard of that could be jumping into the portal that Illinois expects, and do we think there'll be any surprises?
Oh, I think there's going to be surprises. Chase Canada just went into the portal tonight, and so I do think that there are always surprises. There are going to be people that we're going to look at and say, well, why would they go in the portal? I mean, they were set to play this year, or they played this year. I mean, I think there's going to be that. So I think that there's no way we can say. There's no way we can. I can't predict which guys are going in the portal. You can look. If a guy didn't play, odds are he's not going to stay, if he's past a junior, right? Once he gets to his junior year, if he hasn't played, I mean, it's rare to have guys like who kind of wait and develop anymore. Although Illinois has had I will say this, Illinois has had some pretty good success allowing guys to develop over a couple of years. But they see a spot for them. I'll give you an example. How about Hank Beatty? Matt and I talked about, we really like Hank Beatty. He's a really good football player, but he had Isaiah Williams in front of him. That doesn't mean Hank Beatty's not good. It means Isaiah Williams was in front of him at that spot, and it's hard to jump in and take that spot. And then he was injured a little bit before camp, but we saw in the return game and also as a receiver that he could really do some good things this year. Even Pat Bryant wasn't like an immediate guy. He came on later and he kept getting better. That's what you want. And that's what you're going to have. You got to find a way to keep those guys. And I will say this, Brett Bielema is one of the best at keeping those guys that he wants to keep. Mm-hmm. Now, obviously, if they get like all kinds of money, they're not staying, right? I mean, get some big offer, they're not going to stay, whatever. But Brett's really good at getting guys to stay. So hopefully he can continue to do that.
On the flip side of it, 6, 7, 8 years ago, I could see why fans would get frustrated if players decided to leave. It's not that bad anymore. It's different. And it's hard for me to get used to it. But kids want to play. And because they leave doesn't mean that they're disgruntled. They don't like the university. They don't like their class or teammates. They just know that there may be players ahead of them who are better. And that's not the end of the world. You guys just mentioned Hank Beatty and Isaiah Williams. It happens. Matt Stevens and I have joked for 2 years now about a certain receiver, but if you look at this receiver who didn't play a lot, you have Zachary Franklin, who has hands like Spider-Man, and you have one of the best receivers ever played football in Illinois, and Pat Bryant. So I get it. So because a kid leaves doesn't mean that they're mad. It's just because they want to play, and maybe they don't want to come out, during rotation. So it's not like it used to be. And so if kids leave, they'll find another spot and they'll replace those kids.
Yeah, I think Illinois had a really good success rate in retention. Simply because, Mike, it's what we talked about at Wrigley Field after the Northwestern game. It's culture. I think that word gets thrown around a lot, and it's not deservingly around the country. I think with Brett Bielema, it's more or less deserving. I think he builds a culture that he knows, and he's honest with guys that are just going to say, "Hey, look, it's going to take 2 years." Like, I think he was honest with Hank Beatty that, like, hey, look, like, I'm going to try to get you out there your freshman and your sophomore year, but it's not going to be consistent. Like, I just don't have that consistent starting spot for you. And then Hank, being Hank, he worked his way into a consistent spot because he saw a path after Isaiah left as, well, hey, I can return punts. Like, I'll work to do that. And Jaheim Clark knew he wasn't going to be a starting DB his first year at Illinois, but he worked his butt off and got on special teams and then made his first career start at Wrigley Field this past weekend. And I think he's going to be a guy that is integral in what they're doing going forward. James Krutz knows he's got to put on weight. He was told that last year. He was told that this year. He's trying, and he continues to do that. But, he was a consistent guy after Dylan Rosiak got hurt and had that opportunity handed to him and did something with it. Malachi Hood is somebody who was given a specific role this season and told me at the end of the year at the podium, I didn't think I was going to have any kind of role this year. And then sure enough, in the Michigan game, he had a huge role. And then in the Northwestern game, he had a huge role. And I think that just builds kids' confidence. And this staff does a really good job of that. I think Bart Miller does a really, really good job of being honest with his offensive linemen and saying, hey, look, I don't think you should be out there right now because you'll just get creamed. Like you'll get physically dominated, and then I haven't done my job. So they do a really good job. And then I think with what he has to work with, partially a little bit of a beef I have with him, but I agree with Brett Bielema. I think Terrence Jameson's one of the best D-line coaches in the country. And I think you're seeing him find roles early for guys like Alex Bray and, the defensive linemen that play early for him, whether it's like 10 to 20 snaps, there's a reason for that. Like that's their role, like early on in their career. And then they're ready to take over when Johnny Newton and Keith Randolph and Denzel Daxon walk out the door. So it's still a traditional kind of thing in the Smith Center, but they have to be very, very prepared. And Brett Bielema is not stupid. Like they are very, very prepared to get a surprise and go, okay, like you want to leave? That's great. We'll figure it out. And I do think that they are anticipating a lot of attrition here once the portal opens up officially on December 9th, that they're going to have, just simply by numbers, they're going to have a lot of attrition, like just because guys are going to want to go places that they can play.
Yeah, I think that's the part that people don't really understand. And I think it's also, I feel sorry for the coaching staff having to figure out, like, when you're in a meeting with these 85 guys, which ones have already got their heart set on leaving that you may not be aware of, and then also trying to figure out who else's guys can come in and fit the role of the guys that you're losing. And Illinois is one of the youngest teams, out there right now. So there's plenty of young dogs who are ready to hunt, and that makes it a little bit more challenging. Dion talked about the fact you bring in 20, 25 players and 5 guys play. So why not bring in 10 and then spend your time in the portal? Brad, how do you think, you and Ked have been doing recruiting for longer than anybody. Certainly in the Illini market, there's nobody close. How do you think coaches are dealing with this? Where you basically are like a 1-year, 2-year development plan for some other staff.
I think that's the nature of the beast. The one thing is, Bielema said the other day, I thought it was an interesting comment when he said, it's good to see that our guys haven't done well gone other places when they've left. And so it was kind of an interesting comment, about they haven't done well. So I don't think there's been a lot of people leaving that they were really devastated by them leaving. Not a lot anyway. There's always some. But right. I think that the way they're looking at this is, I think Matt mentioned earlier, he talked about how one of them has to hit. And I think that's true at every spot. You want to have some depth, but you got to have a guy, right? I mean, you got to have a guy who comes in as a starter. You can replace it. I mean, if you lose your entire secondary, it doesn't really matter. You're not going to have enough depth to withstand that at Illinois. But you got to have your starting 2 corners. You got to have those guys that are good. And then you may have a guy who comes in and play for a little bit, but you got to be able to have guys at each position. And so I think the more guys you get, the better chance you have of hitting on those guys. So I think Illinois might be different. I think I think Alabama can probably go grab whoever they want. You know what I mean? And Georgia and whoever it is, they can just grab guys. They just grab in Oregon. We talked about earlier. They just go get 1 million 5-star guys and figure it out. But I think Illinois has to take all these guys, and some of them are going to hit, and you hope that they hit and they end up like a Johnny Newton, or they end up like a Matthew Bailey, or they end up like, go down the list, Devin Witherspoon, of guys who are better than their ranking, and they turn out to be an impact player in year 2, year 3, whenever it is. And if that happens, then you're going to be good, and that you just have to trust your evaluations. So I think that's where they're looking at it, and that's what they're trying to do. And then they fill those openings that they need. They look back, they're going to get through this portal season here, or they're in the portal season. They know who's going to leave. They have a good idea. They're going to say, all right, these are the guys, we need to target these positions. Let's go out and get these portal spots filled because we know we need a few of these guys.
Mike, for me, one of the things, I think you mentioned the transfer portal and how the coaches deal with it from a recruiting standpoint. I think football and basketball is a little different. Every summer, I mean, a lot of us get to go around Josh Whitman's round table. And I remember a couple of years ago, he mentioned the fact that when the transfer portal was, when it first initiated, they were really proud. A lot of players didn't leave. Brad's right. Brett does a really good job of keeping kids. I mean, I'm not being paid 6 cents by Brett Bielema, and I'm not here to, be his agent. But I'm going to tell you, when I talk to these recruits, it is different. Whatever this man is selling, I mean, buy stock in it because these kids believe in it. I mean, there's just little things. There's a little thing I saw. I don't remember who one player was. It may have been Boyd, but I know what the other one was, Keontae. He talked about the little things that Brett Bielema does. And here's one for you listeners out there who didn't know. Brett Bielema got on a plane, flew to the middle of Iowa, got off the plane and slides. They would basically just slip on shoes and no socks, just being a guy, like the students. And Ismail made a comment to me. He was like, wait a minute, this dude's down to earth, and then he goes to his visit in Champaign and he had his daughters there playing on the computer, giving him high fives and just hanging out with him. Those little things resonate with people because we all know how much money Brett makes, but he's a human. He's normal. So it matters. And that's why kids want to play for him. Kids want to be there. He's very, very loyal to his players. And with Underwood, we've all heard the junior college thing where, he's used to it, where, kids leave and kids come in. So it's hard to compare. And I'll tell you what, Coach Underwood has mellowed out over the years, and, he came in, he was this tough guy, but he cares about his kids. I mean, for people to think that he doesn't want to see kids succeed either, they're wrong. So recruiting is different. It's a different day and age. We all have to adjust to it. If we have to adjust to it, imagine what it's like for the coaches, because they're the ones going in these homes, flying all over the country, and then in 2 years, 1 year he's in Champaign, in 2 years he could be in Ann Arbor or at Ohio State. So it's different, and it's changing every single day.
And can I just add that that's really the secret sauce, not only to Brett Bielema's program, but to any non-Alabama program. Experience wins in college football, always. That's always the secret sauce. The guys who have had reps, the guys who are physically mature. That's what wins in college football. And when you're able to keep those guys around, develop them before you can get them on the field, that's how you get guys who, overperform the recruiting expectations.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting to kind of see how that goes, and I think we're watching, as Dion kind of redoes how recruiting goes, we're watching a little bit of a rebirth, and then you see Brett Bielema kind of go in the different direction, which is being developmental, and part of that has to go with what you have NIL wise, and that also makes a difference. Anything now that we've kind of seen. We knew who was coming, but now that we've kind of seen this, any thoughts on what you think Illinois is going to work on in the portal now that we've got this portion of time covered? And now I still feel sorry for the college coaches when you end up having, prepare for a bowl while you have the portal open, while you have recruits signing. It just a crazy. I understand trying to help the players out, but this is the calendar is just insane.
We didn't fix the calendar, Mike. I mean, I have coaches every day on my phone right here going, the calendar sucks. Like, December is the worst month of my job. The calendar sucks. And we didn't fix the calendar. And quite frankly, the playoff made it worse because now you've got guys – you've got more teams that are trying to prepare for playoff games and then trying to put a roster together because nobody really truthfully cares about the games that aren't playoff games. I'm talking about postseason. Like, everybody's now trying to figure out how they're going to put their 2025 roster together. Like, if you're not in the playoff, but if you're in the playoff, now you got to try to do both. You got to try to prepare for your playoff games, and now you're trying to put a roster together in 2025. It's just mad. And then, oh, by the way, you've got coaching carousel going on in the month of December as well. So, and then let me be very clear. Also, I want to point this out. Because we are in a different world. All of these kids that signed today, they're not committed to anything. They could literally decide tomorrow, I don't want to be at Illinois. And now suddenly they're not at Illinois. Like, they go sign somewhere else. Like, they have the ability to do that. Like, that's the new rule. That's the new world we live in. AJ Dennis is playing for Michigan State. Like, and so that's the world we live in too, is that in December, hey, we get all this class done. Now we can work on 26. No, we still have to continue to keep our 25 guys from flipping, even though they signed. Until, like, literally they get on campus and start preseason either in the spring or in the summer, we're still recruiting them to our recruiting class. Meanwhile, we've got to try to figure out our next 2 recruiting classes and then portal and whatever, like all of that. So the calendar didn't get fixed, and until we fix the calendar, I don't think coaches are going to get any lick of sleep in December. And I think it's just going to make the profession even more miserable, to be honest, at least in this month.
It flat out amazes me that we ended up with this both in college football and basketball, that the teams that are far into the playoffs end up being at a disadvantage because they're having to, like, more or less, they're having to make tough decisions about who's going to stay on their team for next year while they're coaching them up for the playoff games that might be the most important of their coaching careers and of those kids' playing careers. It's amazing that this is where we ended up.
Well, Mike, I'll go back to your question about what they're going to target in the portal. I think they're going to target defensive line. I think that's an important. I could see them bringing in another offensive lineman. I also could see them bringing in a number 1 outside wide receiver. I think they're confident about where they're at in the slot, but I think they would like a number 1 guy. I think they like some of the guys on the outside, but an experienced, proven guy. And then the other one would be, I think, on the defensive side, besides defensive line, they could use some linebacker help. I mean, and I like most of secondary, but if you get an impact secondary guy, like the kid that just left Northwestern, if you get a guy like that, you have to take them. You have to get guys like that if they have interest. So I don't think they'll add running backs. Of course, that means they'll probably add one tomorrow. But I don't see them adding running backs. I don't think them looking at quarterback unless Luke Altmaier is leaving and Leary leaves or something like that crazy. But I expect that they won't add a quarterback either. So I think those are the other positions are all kind of up for adding somebody to help out with the depth and also with having an impact guy at each position.
For me, I'll be honest with you. I really, if I had an ounce of complaint, the offensive line. That offensive line, I mean, I just want to see holes open. I want to see the quarterback get protected better. I don't know the numbers, but I know we've talked about them before in the past. I could be wrong, but I know going into the last 3 weeks of the season, Luke Altmaier was sacked more than any quarterback in the Big Ten. That has to be fixed. Sorry. And then, I've always joked about running the football. Matt, sorry, it was just to get your goat. I know that's important. You run the football, you have to have a good offensive line, interior offensive lineman to protect the quarterback. Not that the defensive line isn't important because I understand it, but if I had to pick and choose and bet my house on it right now, I would much rather see the offensive line improve because the defensive linemen, they were making plays. They got better. Offensive linemen got better toward the end, but I would like to see them go to the portal to beef that up a little bit. That's my take.
They need all 3 spots on the defensive line. That's issue 1, 2, and 3 in the portal for Illinois. I know that. They need a left tackle. They probably need another interior in offensive line spot, depending upon what, say, Kevin Wigington wants to do when the portal opens up on December 9th. I agree with Brad. I think they, depending upon what happens with the outside linebacker spots, if Gabe Yakus enters the draft, if Alec Bryant enters the portal, and then Seth Coleman's gone, they might want to go get a perimeter pass rusher, a guy that can stand with, in the 2-point stance and go get the quarterback. They might try to go do that. But they are when Dennis Briggs leaves and then T.Y. Edwards leaves, they are so devoid of any kind of discernible returning talent that they can count on the defensive line, even though they're really high on the Alex Brays and the young kids that they played late this season, that they are going to have to go so portal heavy on defensive line because of the misses that they've had in these last 2 recruiting classes at defensive line. I would say objective A, B, and C is defensive line. And then they'll figure out, I think, left tackle when and if they have to. But that has to be the priority going into this December.
So my take, I'm going to have to repeat what you've already heard, but I think I would reverse the priorities a little bit. I think we're going to have some sort of a reliable receiver who can get open. That's got to be number one. I don't think we have that right now. Left tackle probably is going to have to be a priority as well. Defensive line, I've understood they like the young guys that hopefully will have a chance next year. However, I'm still going to call it a 4-alarm fire instead of last year's 5-alarm fire. So we absolutely need a defensive end. We really do need some sort of a reliable defensive end who can make big plays. We might be okay aside from that. But really, to me, given that we are one of the youngest teams in the Big Ten right now, to me, if you gave me $5 million right now, I might just go ahead and spend all of it on one defensive end, one left tackle, and one wide receiver, which is a heck of a lot better position than we were in last year when you might have been tempted to just go ahead and do Dion and get 25 guys out of the portal. This year, we're not nearly in as bad a shape, but yeah, we do have a couple holes to fill. I'm not going to deny it.
Okay, so now I got the behind the scenes. Read one of the most annoying articles I've read in a long time with Larry Ellison, of course, billionaire who's an Illinois alum, on his 5th wife, I believe, who is a huge Michigan fan. So she helped engineer the Bryce Underwood deal. And so I'm like, Illinois just can't catch a break. So, icon for Illinois, look, somebody's got to be working. If he's had 5 wives, there's a good shot there's going to be a 6th. Can we get somebody who's an Illinois fan to marry this man? because we need the billions.
Now, Mike, without reading the article, I have one of my best friends, a Michigan fan. Now, I didn't read the article, but you sent it to us. I was told, she just said, we need a quarterback. What can we do to go get one? And my understanding was they asked who they wanted, and they went out, and the kid was committed, I think, to LSU. I think.
Yeah, that's correct.
The very next day, they paid for him, and he's gone. I mean, it's that easy anymore. It's not right, but what do you do?
Why isn't it right?
Because the kid committed. No, you know what? Here's why it's not.
Oh,
right.
I'm asking. I'm legitimately asking.
I'm going to answer this because he graduated from the University of Illinois, and one of his lovely assistants, or wives, whatever you want to call them, concubines, I don't know, whatever the hell you want to call them, wants to go get a quarterback at Michigan, and you got Illinois is the school where you graduated from. Throw a couple tricks that way because like Steve just mentioned, there's a couple needs at the university where you graduated from, and I don't care what he does with his money because he earned it and it's his, or maybe it's his wife's, she's dictating it. But from a selfish standpoint, I would like
happy wife, happy life.
See somebody go to Illinois is what I would like to see. Why not?
Well,
Okay.
that to me is.
I'm just asking for a friend.
Illinois has to sell.
Yeah, I'm not in the business of trying to tell rich people what to do with their money. Like
I am. God dang it.
Oh, I like telling them what to do with their money. They don't have to listen though. But Larry Ellison, just for perspective, Larry Ellison didn't actually graduate from Illinois.
Thank
He
you.
only went there for 2 years. So
Right.
he was before he went out there. But yeah, so I do think it stinks that Illinois hasn't been able to harvest all the billionaires that they have to bring into this NIL world. Although I will say, there are more. There are some that are starting to jump on board. They have a big fish coming in. I don't know when you're going to see that announcement, but you're going to see one, and he's helping out with some. The other part about these rich guys, they want their name on buildings more than they want a quarterback at a lot of these places, right? I mean, so they want their
priorities are out of whack, Brad.
The building lasts for 30 or 40 years. The quarterback only lasts for probably one. So who knows?
Can I just point out that in 4 months, all of our crying poor for the lack of spending is going to look silly considering how much more money we spend on basketball in NIL than other teams. I mean, it would be nice if we had the spending in football, but let's not pretend like we're not one of the top spenders in basketball. I mean, we do get to enjoy the other side of this coin in March and April.
Good perspective, Mr. Sturm, and you're 100% right.
So,
hey, Steve, if we wanted logic, we wouldn't have invited you.
He's
I'm
right,
sorry.
because he's right, man.
Don't invite the lawyer to the debate then.
Yeah, I will say this, and Sturdy's absolutely right. I think it is let's just say it's a better economic climate inside the Smith Center than it has been. There still is an attitude among people that could help that I need to see it again in 2025. And I'm telling you, that pisses everybody off in the Smith Center.
I'm sure.
Because, like, in a way that everybody here understands. Like, we are showing you a return on investment, and now we got to do it again. And now you're going to come up with another excuse as to why we got to do it again. That's the attitude of some people that work in the Smith Center right now.
Yeah, and I understand both sides because
yes, I do.
As a person who's been around Illinois athletics, we've seen this before.
Right.
One good year does not a program make, right? And so
although we've rarely seen it. Yeah, I mean, let's face it. I mean, of course, you can play this both ways, but Bielema is basically, 2 games away from actually having 4 winning seasons in a row, which is like the holy grail.
Hey, come on, Tim Beckman. Hey, we're only 6 plays away from being undefeated. So
I will also.
This was after the first game, though, Brad.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, I'll also say this, guys, is that I'm hearing a lot of talk about the revenue sharing, like the $22 million revenue sharing, about how that's going to be basically the cap. No,
no freaking way.
Right.
There is you cannot tell a billionaire that they can't spend his NIL money, that they, and I'll tell you, the other thing is, can you imagine this discussion? Can you imagine Ohio State sitting there going, when Carnell Tate was here, I guess we got to give them to Illinois because we don't have enough money in our cap. That'll never happen. Right. Ever. Period.
The under the table basically will now be NIL, which is the additional plus whatever you want.
They're setting it up perfectly.
That's what's coming. And the other thing I will point out, Ked, is that Bryce Underwood is born and raised in Detroit. So he decommitted. A Detroit kid decommitted from LSU and committed to Michigan. My guess is that's going to happen again later on in life. Like, so for all the LSU people,
if he has that wife, I'm sure it's going to happen.
Like, for all the LSU people that are rightfully trying to put Brian Kelly's head on a stick right now because he lost somebody that could be the next Cam Newton, the number 1 player in this recruiting class. Like, again, I'm pretty sure it didn't take a whole lot of sell job for a Detroit kid to say, you want me to save Michigan football and Michigan offense? That's not a hard sell. So, like, at the end of the day, LSU needs to get their together in terms of NIL. Yeah, I said it. And
they've got that together. They just have to figure out.
No, they don't.
Figure out what happens when the billionaires
I know.
This is why, guys. This is why I'm telling you. This is why Nick Saban was like, maybe it's better to retire because these big land grant universities up north got a lot more billionaires than they got coming out of some of those schools. And they're like, wait a minute, all of a sudden that $400,000 in a shoebox from 6 car dealers, it doesn't look that big anymore because Ellison can come to town. He can make it rain.
Right. I can just tell you that the attitude was LSU didn't spend in the portal because they had this high school class coming. And now the high school class isn't coming. And so they need to get their you-know-what together. And it's easy for LSU to do that, but they got to.
Brad,
Yeah,
you
I
had
think-
something?
Well, I was going to say, I think you're assuming that people spend their money intelligently. So, in Alabama, that is more important. Football is more important than like breathing. I mean, or at least a close second. So they're going to spend all their money. If their children can't eat, then that's okay. I'm still going to give to the NIL fund at Bama because we have to win football games.
Was there a point there, Brad? I don't get it.
There was an organ donation van outside of Alabama's football stadium. After a loss, you would see thousands of people ready to donate their kidneys in order to get one more 4-star player that they might need.
Man, I am going to need to show up at an Alabama game and just walk around with a sign after they lose. Donate to me. I run NIL.
Well,
and
they
just be
don't
out of there.
They don't lose at home very often.
Yeah, I know. That's why once every 20 years.
Hard pressed finding that, but no, I do think that the Illinois has done a much better job in the NIL front. I think they've raised money. I mean, talking to Kathleen Knight, an event last summer rather. I think they had $3 million as the goal for this fall. I think they're going for $6 million this coming year. I think they're going to overshoot $6 million for NIL money. I think they're going to hit higher than that. Now I know that that's still not at the top of the stratosphere or anything, but and I will tell you that I think there is a lot of under the table stuff that still goes on that we don't, besides NIL, besides the legal stuff, the NIL stuff, there's under the table stuff going on all the time too, even to this day. And that helps a lot of these programs that are, the blue bloods and have lots of people donating cash.
Because you don't have to pay taxes on that, Brad.
Yeah, you're right.
So we got another question here from Dino. I wonder if this is Dino from St. Louis. But anyway, how do you feel about Notre Dame in the playoff race? And then this will be our wrap up. But anybody who knows me knows that if Notre Dame's in a game, I can turn it on in hopes of watching them lose. So I want Notre Dame to get spanked, and I'm tired of this love. But I will say Notre Dame this year gave me a wonderful evening of entertainment when they lost to NIU.
What if they're matched up with Indiana?
Notre Dame is my most hated team in any sport, anywhere, because I had to grow up and watch the top 50 recruits in the state of Illinois. Illinois gets 0, and Notre Dame have like 9. So I got tired of that.
I look at Notre Dame. They're probably locked into either the 5 or the 6, right? I mean, Is that pretty fair to say?
Yep.
I mean, I think if Oregon, I think Oregon would slide only to the 5 if they lost.
I agree.
To Penn State. But I think if Penn State loses, then I think Notre Dame would be at the 5, right?
Let's you might want to turn your camera off, Mike, because we don't want to see your head explode, but I think there's a legitimate chance that Notre Dame sneaks into a bye at the top 4.
Can't get it, Mike. Or can't get it, Steve.
Oh, you're right. Because the conference championship. My fault.
I almost pulled Steve off the podcast there.
Yeah, so I think I think they're locked into the 5 or 6.
Yeah.
I think if Oregon wins, then they become the 5. Penn State probably slots in the 6. And then it depends on Texas, Georgia, how that plays out. I think Georgia moves into the top. Maybe Penn State moves to 7. But I mean, so I think that could happen. But yeah, I really believe that, they're a team that can win that first round game. But and they may, if they're the 5 and they get one of those, like, who's the 4? I mean, who's the 4? I mean, Boise State, or is it, who has it? I mean, but if it is Boise State, they can beat Boise State. I mean, I think they can. I think they can beat. I think the 12 seed game might be as tough as anything. What if it's Notre Dame? How about Notre Dame, Alabama? How about, would that not? There's no wonder they want that game, because they want the TV ratings that would come.
Oh my God. Can you imagine the ratings?
Alabama first round game, and the winner gets Boise State. I
Well,
don't know. I'm trying to
supposedly-
diss on Boise State, but think about the difference there and what we're talking historically and TV ratings and all that stuff.
Brad just made a whole bunch of people at Disney pass out right now in excitement.
Well,
I also don't think that. I think if any of those teams are, they wouldn't. I don't think Notre Dame's going to beat Oregon if they're the 1 seed overall. I don't think that'll happen.
I do think they're right now these guys at ESPN are so happy because I think they banked on the fact that now you're gonna get a Friday night game with either Notre Dame or Ohio State, and a Saturday night game with the other. And you talk about turning on TVs across this country. That will be just phenomenal, and I think they're so excited. And I'm going to say something right now. This program this idea of the CFP for 12 teams. What a great thing, because people were watching 5 or 6 college games that meant something even on the last Saturday of the season. And back in the old days, with 4 teams, maybe 3 of them were a lock and it was a 4th team. And the rest of the country was out of it by, the second week of September or whatever, because they had a loss or 2. So I think that this CFP has been just a godsend. And I think you give this a few years, and I think they're going to have numbers that rival the NFL when it comes to the actual broadcast.
So there's 2 things here. One is, if Mike's really likes a 12-team playoff, enjoy
16,
it.
baby.
Enjoy it, because it's going to 14 and it's going to 16. Because I'm telling you, in about a week, you're going to watch Greg Sankey have an absolute conniption at his 3-loss SEC teams that don't get in, and he's going to go to the meeting in Dallas this offseason and go, guys, 4 of my teams are getting in, period. Like, and Tony Petitti is going to sit across the table and go, 4 of my teams are getting in. Like, and that's when we go to 14 or 16. The other thing about Notre Dame is that I'm fascinated, guys, by the idea that I think I'm wondering what the benefit in all kinds of ways are going to happen for the 4 teams that get to host a game. Like, we've never had this before. On campus college football playoff games. I'm jacked for it, but I also think the schools are going to be really, really on cloud 9 about it. They get to sell out their stadiums. They get all of the revenue off that. You imagine, it's probably going to be in some cold weather places like South Bend, obviously, and then probably Happy Valley. But tailgating is just going to be unbelievable for these games. The anticipation for these games are going to be great, and that's what college football is all about. And I wish the next round games were on campus, and not in these sterile, NFL type stadiums, Bulls type stadiums. But I think the 4 teams that get to host are really going to see a benefit, not only in the near, future, but in year after year after year, going to see a benefit of hosting these games. I know it's an extra game you got to play, but getting all the revenue off of hosting a playoff game, man, that's good. That's literally going to be money in the bank for them. And I think it's awesome to see.
And I'm a purist, but I cannot wait to see what the cold weather conditions are going to do to some of these teams that are not ready for it at all. You have 2- and 3-year NFL vets who have never played in a cold weather game. And they absolutely panic when it happens. And you're going to have some 18 and 19-year-old college kids who've never been in cold weather playing Boise and Notre Dame in late December and January. And that's going to be crazy.
All right, guys, we are going to wrap it there, folks. If you enjoy this type of discussion, you can get this at IlliniGuys.com. And the cool thing is you get all of our articles. There's no paywall if you subscribe. You also get the stuff early in many cases. And the best part is there's a message board where you can debate with thousands of Illini fans from around the world. And you can actually have interactive questions where you talk to Brad, Matt, Ked, Steve, Larry, even me about what we were saying, why we said it, nuances. It is well worth it. And I'm telling you right now, when you join right now, and it's only going through Sunday night, you get an Illini Guys 20-ounce stainless steel tumbler with your subscription. It is the deal of all deals. Make sure you do that. What a gift for Christmas. It's the perfect time of the year. If you know an Illini fan, you definitely want to get in on this and subscribe right now. Until next time, folks, which next time will be Friday night when we do halftime live and then we do the post game when Illinois opens up against the Northwestern Wildcats to start the men's basketball Big Ten season. Until then, go Illini.